This is Curl Up with a Cattail, and I'm Gwen Cooper, the New York Times bestselling author of numerous cat-centric titles, including Homer's Odyssey, A Fearless Feline Tale, or How I Learned About Love and Life with a Blind Wonder Cat, Spray Anything, More True Tales of Homer and the Gang, and The Book of Possum, Head Bonks, Raspy Tongues, and 101 Reasons Why Cats Make Us So happy. We're here to celebrate all things feline and to tell inspirational cat tales. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to an all-new episode of Curl Up with a Cattail with Gwen Cooper. I am, of course, Gwen Cooper, your host, and delighted, as always, to be here with you today. In just a few minutes, and I'm going to keep this up top portion of the podcast very short today, because in a couple of minutes, we are going to be speaking with the head of the rescue group in Sweden who rescued Kelly in order to give us an update on Kelly's status as of right now when we are recording. And I know many of you are waiting anxiously to hear what's going on, so I don't want to keep you too long from that. And I do want to apologize, by the way, if I seem a little tongue-tied. I actually just finished recording the interview with Shalini in Sweden about the status of Kelly. And I got very riled, as I'm sure will not come as a surprise to anybody who knows me or who listens to this podcast or who knows where I stand, certainly on the issue of blind cats. And actually, to that point, I was talking with Shalini after we finished recording. We were chatting, and I was sorry at that point that I had not continued to record because she was telling me, and we will talk about this later in the episode, but an amazing and huge thank you to the unbelievable efforts of all of you who signed and circulated the petition on Kelly's behalf, who wrote letters to the courts or to the rescue organization, those of you who spoke as scientists, as animal lovers, as the guardians of blind cats yourselves. If we are successful, it will solely be because of you. And apparently, from what I learned in this interview, many of you also called the courts in Sweden, which was certainly nothing that I had asked you to do, but God love you for going the extra mile. And so Shalini who is that is the name of the person I'm interviewing. And Shalini was telling me that the courts, she spoke with some people at the courts who were very surprised because the Swedes are a very quiet, non-demonstrative sort of people. And Shalini was saying that while she knows that many people in Sweden feel bad about Kelly or feel sorry for her or think that what's happening is wrong, they are not, it's a cultural difference, but there's not as strong a cultural tendency, let's say, to raise a large outcry when people disagree really about anything. I don't want to tread too far down this, but you understand they are a quieter and more non-demonstrative people than we Americans tend to be. And I actually said that. I said, we Americans, we can be pretty rowdy when we put our minds to it. We are the original dump the tea in the harbor, take to the streets, throw off the shackles of our European overlords people. And we get her done. Americans get her done. And this, by the way, I understand that I know that many of you in Germany, in Switzerland, in England, in Australia, in New Zealand, who not only listen to the show, but have also advocated on behalf of Kelly. And I thank you tremendously for that as well. I mean, ultimately, all kidding aside, we are, of course, all animal lovers, and we, many of us are rescuers, and we know that it's down to us. That if we do not speak and if we do not take action, if we do not do something, then nobody will. And I really think that actually is a universal impulse. And I was so thrilled to see it demonstrated by so many of you who listen to this podcast. And for those of you who are members of my Patreon community and who listen to the bonus podcast that Lawrence and I do for our Patreon community, we are going to be speaking to this a little bit. Lawrence actually lived in Sweden for a year, so we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the cultural differences from Lawrence's perspective as an American and the ways in which Swedes protest injustice versus the way that Americans protest injustice. And so on and so forth. And speaking of Patreon, I do want to give a big shout out and thank you to 4 new members of our Patreon community who have joined in the last few days. And that those people are Angie Mendez, April Crawford, Grace Brown, and Cindy Settle. thank you so much to the four of you and also to the rest of you, to all of you who support me on Patreon. And, it is not just the writing of self-published books and taking classes in advertising and marketing so that I can promote those books independently of traditional publishers, and my ability to work independently of traditional publishers and to keep this podcast and my social media accounts and Homer's social media accounts and everything I do 100% independent and sponsor-free. That is all because of you, those of you on Patreon, and also my ability to support causes like what is happening with Kelly in Sweden, or what Homer's Heroes efforts will be on behalf of cats and animals who are affected by the wildfires out west in the U.S. right now. I've been speaking with some rescue organizations on the ground, some local rescue groups, and figuring out what their needs are. And I'm going to be letting you know what Homer's Heroes are going to be able to do to help some of these displaced animals, to help save lives, to help reunite families, help reunite four-legged family members with their two-legged family members. But all of this is all because of Patreon. It is work I could not do without it or without you. And if you want to learn more about it, you can head over to Patreon, P as in Paul, A, T as in Thomas, R as in Robert, EO, N as in Nancy.com/Gwen Cooper. We also have a great time. We have bonus podcasts and bonus columns and writing and photos of Homer that no one has ever seen except for Lawrence and me. And, exclusive tote bags that aren't for sale anywhere, that are only for people on Patreon, and excerpts from books in progress. And a bunch of people on Patreon just got their copies of the original first draft for Homer's Odyssey with my editor's handwritten notes on it. So that's pretty cool. And we've been having a good time over there. But of course, what you are all anxious to hear about is the update on what is happening with Kelly the kitten in Sweden. And we're going to have that for you in about 30 seconds. So sit back, hang out, get comfortable, and stick around for more Curl Up with a Cattail. Thanks so much for sticking around. Today's guest founded Sweden's first no-kill rescue organization, Kattjouren, 25 years ago. Today, it's a Facebook-based network that facilitates rescue by connecting people willing to help with cats who are in need. She also runs a fundraising foundation that raises money for animal rescue, the major part of which pays for advanced veterinary care like Kelly the kitten's eye surgery. In addition to all this, she holds a Master of Law degree and works training people in public speaking and communication. She has a very full plate these days, so we're especially pleased that she's made time to join us on today's podcast. Please welcome Shalini Persson.
Thanks a lot, Gwen, for that introduction.
And let me just ask you
I'm
first,
glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Please do not be afraid to correct me.
You do. It's Shalini. Yes.
Shalini. All right. I love it when I get it right on the first try. So Shalini, obviously many people have been incredibly moved by Kelly's story, and we are going to get into the backstory and how you became involved with her, and a fuller explanation of how these things work in Sweden, which I know that some of my readers and followers are not sure they're quite understanding. Mm-hmm. But the first and the most important question is, what is the update? What is going on with Kelly right now, as of today, Saturday, when we are recording this interview?
Okay, Gwen. So right now what's happening is we have handed in the information, the appeal, to the administrative court. And they are now looking at it. We were hoping that we might get a reply, a decision on Friday, but we didn't last Friday. So now we're hoping that we will have a decision on Monday, but we are not sure.
Okay. And, I know, so one thing that is very frustrating for me, and and I spent a lot of time in Sweden. My husband actually used to live in Sweden, and we still have many friends in Stockholm. So we are back and forth on once every year, once every couple of years. We were last in Sweden actually in 2019, so not very long ago. And so I can report from firsthand experience that Sweden does have the internet. And
indeed,
the reason I feel it's important to state this, here's what's frustrating for me, and I think for a lot of people who follow, who've been following this on my social media. So I saw this article in Aftonbladet, which I know is one of your major newspapers in Sweden, one of your main national newspapers, and I read the story about Kelly. And it talks about how the veterinarians working for the county who first made the assessment that a blind kitten would suffer mental harm growing into adulthood, they were speaking theoretically. They were asked to theorize on what might happen to a young kitten who went blind. And the reason I find this so frustrating, in light of the fact that Sweden, I have to reiterate, does indeed have access to the internet, is because there are so many blind cats out there. I guess I'm wondering, and maybe you could speak to this a little bit in the first place, why the Swedish Council for Animal Welfare was asked to give a hypothetical assessment rather than anybody just Googling, blind cats and seeing what was happening with real life blind cats already out there.
Well, you're putting the finger on something that I myself find very weird. It's like, yeah, it's strange. It's strange because this would not be the regular way to handle a single report from a woman who saw a post on Facebook and was worried.
All right, so give us a little bit of the background, because that I think is an important point too. How did all of this start? I think, again, a lot of people are asking, they don't understand if there's a rescue that wanted to save the cat and a family that wanted to adopt the cat, then why is the government even involved in the first place?
So let me tell you about what happened. Kelly was found by someone. I mean, she was found in a garden, and the person who lived there, they contacted a cat rescue. It's not the one that I founded many years ago. It's another one called Cat Commando Syd. And they took the kitten in, they took Kelly in, and they went to the vet with her immediately. They didn't delay. And the first vet gave them a time, booked a time for inoculation of one eye 1 week later. But they thought that was a little bit late. So they waited for a bit, but after 1 day or 2 days, it was worse. So they went to the vets again. Then, in time, Kelly had surgery at another vet's.
And this was paid for by your foundation, right? Your foundation.
And this was right. We were involved from the beginning when they found her and got her.
Because it was clear that she was going to need some sort of significant intervention medically.
So even when they after they'd been to the first vet, I think that was when they called and asked for support, wanted to know if we would support the cost. And of course we would. So, and then she had the surgery, which was, we were not talking many days after she was first found, and she was under constant vet care. She was not in the hospital, but she was going in and out just to make sure that she was not in pain, just to make sure that, what should be done.
Right. The normal responsible steps were taken, obviously, to minimize her discomfort, given how severe her eye infection was.
Definitely. And I want to tell you, and I want to underscore that each vet she went to was very surprised and even noted, the animal hospital, they noted in her journal that she was remarkably not, what would you say? She didn't appear to be in pain. She didn't appear to be troubled, even though the vet said she had to have some level of pain because of these eyes. But it wasn't even noticeable because she was behaving like any happy and boisterous little kitten. She was eating, she was playing.
And I'm sorry to jump in, but I feel like that's a point worth noting too. I mean, it speaks to there's so really there's no end of things that you and I could talk about, I think, on this subject. But, with Homer, the veterinarian who saved his life, Dr. Patricia Cooley, who wrote the foreword to my book about him, noted the same thing, that he was this tiny kitten with this horrible eye infection. It was so bad. I think she noted in the book, in the foreword that she wrote, that she pulled a maggot out of one of what was left of his eyes. Yes, it was very advanced. But he was eating and he was playing and he was otherwise a happy. That was the reason why, the couple that brought him to her initially wanted her to put him down because they were convinced he was suffering horribly. But after spending a few minutes with him, she realized that, he seemed happy and playful and he was eating, and obviously his eyes were bothering him. No one is pretending that wasn't the case, but she felt very strongly that once the surgery was performed, he would be like any other happy, healthy kitten, and he would accept the reality of this world in which he couldn't see. And I'm only, stopping you to make that point, that this is not specific to this one blind cat. I know that everybody listening to the show is obviously already very sympathetic to the issue of special needs cats, but that it's, again, important not to anthropomorphize insofar as, because something would bother us, it is not, that does not mean it would bother the kitten. And it is not unusual. Kelly being okay with her blindness is not unusual. It's actually pretty standard, I would think.
I think you're stating something very important with that when you said that about anthropomorphize. Usually it's the no-kill organizations that are accused of anthropomorphizing animals. But I do think that this is what we're seeing here, that Kelly's eyes, they looked so bad. She looked terrible. She looked like people didn't want to look at this. And I think much of this reaction that we see from the person who reported her and also from the government officials here or the county officials is that the offense taken by humans watching something like this, and we just want it to go away.
Us, right? It bothers us. It doesn't bother the cat. It bothers us, and we. This is why you can always change the channel, right? This is why you don't have to look at anything that bothers you. We live in a wonderful world where nobody has to look at anything that doesn't bother them if they don't want to, or that does bother them if they don't want to.
But I think this is the case here. They've been so bothered by it, and for many people, I mean, we were all bothered by looking at it. Of course, we felt empathy.
But so coming back, so this is what happened. So somebody saw the picture of Kelly pre-surgery on Facebook and decided, oh my God, look at this horrible monster of a kitten who these people are keeping alive and suffering. I have to do something about it. And so what happened then? This person saw it.
And then this person reported it to, on the contrary, to the other people who was also very bothered, but took in the information that this kitten is under vet care, is judged as being in good shape and recovering, etc. This one woman, she reported it instead. She just acted from her
who did
offense.
She report it to? So she reported it to
the county administrative board, which is the entity responsible for upholding animal protection, animal welfare in the region.
Okay, so it'd be sort of like if, in America we have, animal control, basically in various counties, in various states across the country. And they are the ones who are supposed to investigate, claims of animal cruelty, who rescues, stray animals from the streets. And so it sounds like this is a similar sort of organization. Somebody called in and said, here's an instance of animal cruelty, and they came in to investigate that report.
Yeah, some part of animal cruelty goes it's the county's area of responsibility. So yes, that is what happened.
Okay.
And then usually what they do is they investigate. And if the cat is, or the animal is under the care of a vet, of course, the first thing that they do is to contact that vet and get an opinion from that vet.
Okay.
But this is not what happened in this case.
So what happened in this case then is different than what would usually happen.
Well, there's two counties involved. The first one made a sort of investigation, but they thwarted the information that they got. For instance, the animal hospital that saw Kelly, that decided that she was in a state that she should be operated on and that she could be operated on, that it was suitable for her. They talked to that vet, but instead of writing what I just said and what we have in the vet's writing that she said, instead of getting that down on paper, they wrote that that hospital didn't want to perform the surgery from ethical reasons. They implied
and was that
was
true? Was
no,
that true?
it was
That
a lie.
hospital? Okay. And why? And I'm sorry, I'm just so why? Why would so basically so the county came into here's this charge of animal cruelty. The county's come in to investigate. They went to the vet who was treating the kitten and they made up a lie. They said that the vet said something that he never said so that they would have a reason to seize the kitten.
This was it's a very confusing case. So it's taking place in two counties. So the first county where the report was made, they went to the animal hospital that saw Kelly before she came to the second animal clinic where she had surgery. So they said when they talked to the vet at the animal hospital, Evidencia it's called, they asked her they of course asked what she thought about the cat, etc. But what they wrote was, they just summarized it, that in their question to the university that they later asked about the opinion, in the summary to that university, they wrote that two vets took a look at the cat or examined the cat and did not want to operate on her. And that was a lie.
And that was okay. So they've seized the kitten. They have this now fabricated statement from the veterinarian saying that the veterinarians don't want to perform the surgery. And then they went to, if I'm understanding correctly, they went to the Swedish Council for Animal Welfare and asked them to...
Not really. So the first county, they just make the investigation and they thwart the information in a bit. So it gives the impression that Kelly is really suffering and that some small practice vet clinic wants to save her, and they put save in quotation marks.
Right.
And then they talk to they send this case on to their colleagues in another county where Kelly is, where the vet clinic where Kelly is situated. Okay. And that county, instead of doing what would be the regular procedure and contact the vet, they did not. Instead, they contacted, like you said, the National Center of Animal Welfare at a university, at our agricultural university.
And I'm gonna get to that in a moment, this theoretical opinion offered. But I guess what I'm wondering is, why did they fabricate what do they have against this kitten that they are trying to drum up evidence for why she shouldn't live? Why are they working so hard to find a reason that she should be euthanized? Why? I guess that's what's perplexing. I mean, here in the United States, if you had a kitten who a rescue organization was willing to spend the money to save, and a family was willing to adopt her, then that would sort of be the end of it. Now, if somebody reported animal cruelty, the government might make the county might make a pro forma sort of investigation. But if there was a veterinarian who said, no, I'm taking care of her, it's all good, they wouldn't even want to get any further involved. They would just want to leave well enough alone. Like, there's a vet, there's a rescue group, there's an adoptive family. There's really no need for us to be here. It seems like this county not only got involved, but they made things up to make things look worse, to make a better case for killing the kitten. And I guess that's why. What's the payoff in that? What's the reason for that?
I mean, I can only speculate because
speculate. But this is a podcast, just wildly speculate. All kidding aside, I mean, this is why are they so invested in killing this one little blind kitten? I think that's what none of us really understands.
So I'm wondering as much as you, because I can't, to be honest with you, I can't find anything in Kelly's case, and I've gone through it over and over again. I can't find anything there that would explain the way they have handled it. I can't find it because it's just not in the case. It's not just in Kelly's behavior or anything. So now I am speculating, the only explanation I can find is in a completely different case, which is ongoing at the moment.
So there's a previous history between the rescue and the county.
Yes, there is.
So now we're getting somewhere. All right, so tell us a little bit about this previous history. And
so the previous case or the other case going on now is even more sad, I would say, than Kelly's case, because these cats, they are dead today. They are already euthanized. They got killed. They were collected. They were seized from a hoarder, and they were. The thing was, the animal control inspectors that went to that place, they needed to make a decision about seizing the animals, but they didn't need to execute it on the spot. And they didn't want to do that either. They gave this woman one day to get help from the cat rescue to get the cats. And that it was 8 grown-up cats and it was 11 kittens. They were 2 to 3 weeks old, so they couldn't move around. I mean, I would say they were rather around 2 weeks. So they were like just in 3 baskets with their mom. So the cat rescue was going to come the next day, and the county knew that because it was their animal protection inspectors that said so, and they even wrote it in the report. And then the county comes and takes all the cats anyhow, even though the owner got this information. And then they got the information from the rescue right on that they were willing to take them. The rescue had checked with us if we could pay for them if they were sick or something. So we said, we can pay anything. You can just take them directly to the best animal hospital and have them examined, and we'll cover all costs. And that is also what the rescue told the county.
I'm sorry, and I'm going to interrupt you right here to say that your fundraising foundation clearly does extraordinary work, if that's the case, because I know there are a lot of rescuers listening to this who can only dream of being in a position of being able to say, take these 18 cats to the best veterinarian there is, and we can assure you right now that we will pay all costs. I also think, right, but I mean, this speaks to you, but again, I do want to emphasize that you are in Sweden. You are doing this fundraising in Sweden. It is not that the Swedish people are barbaric where cats are concerned. It sounds like there's you are raising this kind of money.
Yeah, there's so many beautiful animal friendly people, and they are that fully supports no kill rescues, and they are the reason why we are able to fundraise and then give that support to the rescue. So I that's my heartfelt thank you to those people. They are the ones making this possible, and we always do everything. I mean, like, the only time we euthanize is if it is for the sake of the animals, never for lack of funds or resources.
I mean, and that is an extraordinary thing all by itself. And I also, by the way, would like to add that this, this comes back for me to an old irritation, and I hate to be this person who says this, but I think we all know that, whether it's in Sweden or the United States, I think there's always more a faster trigger finger when it comes to cats than with dogs. People don't want to exit, people don't want to kill 11 puppies, as opposed to 11 kittens. And I always
doubt.
No. And I think that comes back to an idea that there's still a tendency to think of cats as pests, kind of, and not just feral cats, which I do not agree with, but at least I sort of see the logic if you're a person who doesn't like cats in the first place. But even with indoor domestic cats, who've been in a border situation or whatever the case may be, there is, and I'm I always say an equal opportunity animal lover. My point is not, those are stupid dogs, man. Why do people like dogs so much? Dogs are the worst. I love dogs. I just wish there was as much love for cats out there as there is for dogs.
I agree with you, and we see this all the time. How cats are treated in a completely different way, not only by the county, not only homeless cats, but also at the animal hospitals when it comes to what vets are willing to do for dogs compared to cats. And it's not a matter of what the owner is willing to pay. It's like some kind of they are viewed in another light. And so to go back to the 19 cats.
I'm sorry, but I do also want to, I know that there are many wonderful veterinarians who are cat specific, who listen to this show. And I have always been very lucky to have worked with veterinarians who I know love cats as much as dogs. It is very sad to hear about, situations where that's not the case. But again, we do want to say that is not, necessarily typical, but it is a prejudice that exists in some places.
It's a very common prejudice in Sweden, and we do have wonderful vets that really proves the opposite. The wonderful vets that work so much with cats and that really do all they can, no matter if it's a cat or a dog or a rabbit.
Right. So it seems like there was this pre-existing history then, basically.
Yeah. So
Kelly is now the victim of.
Yeah. So I wanted to say that what happened in the other case is that all of these 19 cats were euthanized, and they were euthanized saying, like, actually on false basis. It was said that they were sick. Then when we got out, because, there are like quite much rights to get information out from the government or from the county here. So we got the vet certifications from the examinations of these cats, and they were healthy. And they were euthanized on false grounds. And that was what the rescue and also my foundation, what we questioned. And we really reached out on Facebook, and we reached so many people who questions the county. And what they did was they used state television, or maybe it was the radio, I don't know, I don't remember, but they used it not to really go into counter argument and talk about the issue, but to say that they were bothered by so many people questioning them, and they didn't have time to do their job because they were busy replying to all of these emails. So I think that is the background. And then the same county, they get like 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that, not even that, maybe they get a report from this woman who saw a post on Facebook. And I can't more than speculate, but I do think that is the reason why they acted in a
they just don't like you guys
way.
They just don't like you guys is what it sounds like. They think you think you guys are a pain in the neck with all of your blah 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 about cats, basically.
Yep. Yes, and wanting cats like the no kill, that's not popular because it's misinterpreted.
No, I understand.
Then, yeah.
As keeping sick cats limping around in agony because you don't want to kill them.
Of it.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It's often portrayed in that way. So
and I'm going to come back to another one of my favorite grievances, I guess, which is it's always a nuisance when it's women advocating for something, and men who consider themselves to be scientists don't really like hearing from women who have a contrary opinion.
Yeah, I do think the gender issue when it comes to the cat rescues, who are the majority are women, of course, the majority of people. So I think that plays in also
because women are awesome. So everyone knows that boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider and girls go to Mars to be superstars. At least that's what I learned when I was 8 years old. So putting that aside for that, by the way, I, of course, love and respect Ben, and this, I am not trying to turn this into an us versus them kind of thing.
No,
But I do think
not.
that this somewhat, there's more of a sense to feel that women are complaining as opposed to men making making a point. And
Yes.
and I think that is a universal kind of a thing. I will tell you, so I read this article, I mean in the English translation, of course, in Aftenbladet about Kelly. And it seems to me, they were talking about the theoretical position or opinion that had been offered by the government veterinarian, speculating as to what life with a blind cat might be like. What the paper did not mention at all, they did mention that the petition with 10,000 signatures. And again, thank you to all my listeners who helped make that happen.
Yes. Thank you.
And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because I do want to give my listeners the props that they deserve. But it is of concern to me that while they mentioned the petition, they did not mention any of the testimony, either from people with firsthand experience living with blind cats or veterinarians and scientists who have firsthand experience dealing with. And again, if I were a person reading this article, I would just get the sense that 10,000 hysterical people who don't know much hastily signed a petition based on a knee-jerk emotional reaction, and not because they knew what they were talking about.
Yes, I agree with you there. And the communications manager at the county administrative board, she says her opinion. She gives her opinions as if they were fact, undisputed fact, when they are in fact very much disputed facts.
Again, and I have to, why has nobody in a position to decide these things Googled blind cats and found the many thousands of videos and articles and I mean, even taking Homer, if Homer had never existed, I'm not saying this is how could anybody not know about Homer? Forget about Homer. Homer never existed. There are still so many articles and so much information, so many videos, so many quote unquote influencers on social media. There are blind cats with millions of followers cumulatively. And so why are they speaking, the way we might talk about what would happen if we found life on Mars someday? Like we know with blind cats, we
know. And even in Sweden, we know it's not just internationally. I've been contacted and we've been contacted by so many veterinarians who have cats, who are blind, who have had cats, who have treated so many patients, so many pet parents with blind cats. I mean, it's not like you said, this is not a controversial. Before this case, I wouldn't have said that this was a controversial issue. It is whether blind cats can live good and quality lives or not. It's a fact that they can't.
And I'm sorry to keep, and I'm going to stop now to keep harping on this point. I just really want to argue with someone, and sadly, the only person I can argue with is you, and you agree with me.
Yeah, I agree with you totally.
I just really want to have. I really want to have this fight with somebody, and I'm all the way over here in America, and it's very frustrating. But let's talk a little bit about, because I know so many people listening to this podcast played a part in circulating that petition, in writing letters to the courts or to you, either from a personal, I've lived with a blind cat perspective, or from a more scientific, I'm a veterinarian who's worked with blind animals. Everybody did their part, but of course, everybody only knows their part of it. So tell me a little bit, I mean, we know that there are 10,000 signatures on the petition. What has, from your perspective, as the person getting all of this information, what has the response been like?
To start with, I think there's like 2 petitions with almost 10,000 or more each. So we're talking about 20,000 people at least.
That's amazing.
It. And I think I was saying this to you the other day, that when Kelly wins, because I will not imagine anything else, then it will be so much because of the Americans and the other people in your wonderful network. We've had many people from all over the world intervening here putting time into writing these wonderful letters, statements, opinions, sharing their professional knowledge, their experiences, sending videos and pictures of their cats. I mean, there's been a response in Sweden. I've had several wonderful Swedish vets, and I do think that the court got so many emails and messages from Swedish people. But I have to say the main part of the experts' opinions, of the letters from veterinarians, specialists in feline behavior, and also I think there were vet journalists, etc., they came from your network. So I'm so immensely grateful and touched. I couldn't have imagined this kind of support. And I do. This case should never have been a case at all, but then it was. And the county is acting the way they are. And without the ammunition, without the facts that we got, the proof that we got from you and your network, I don't think we would stand the case against the unfairness that is ruling here.
You know, and this is something, and I hear, you know, this is a point that I make all the time. And first, I would like to thank the Homer's heroes. Really, you guys just are heroes, and all of you, everybody who wrote a letter on Kelly's behalf, whether it was a scientist or somebody who just lives who wrote to the courts like I did. You know, but something I always like to reiterate, because so many people who love animals or even who work in animal rescue find themselves very disillusioned with people. And certainly stories like this about government overreach or malicious people acting from personal motivations to act against the interests of an animal. It makes us, you know, it reminds us of why we love animals so much, because this is not the kind of shenanigans that animals engage in. But I always remind people there are more good people out there than bad. There are just so few people in the position that I am in, or that you are now in, where, you know, everybody signed the petition and then they moved on. Everybody wrote their letter and then they moved on. You and I get to see how many people we get to read those letters. You know what I mean? Like everybody who wrote to the courts, just about everybody CC'd me. So everyone saw their one letter, but I got to see hundreds of letters. You have gotten to see hundreds of letters and responses. And I always let you know, I'm so lucky to have that kind of bird's eye view that so few people get. But I do always like to remind everybody, do not be disappointed in people. There are always more good people out there than bad. It's just that acts of destruction are loud and fast, and they make the news, and acts of creation are quiet and they take more people working longer and over a longer period of time, and they're not as noticeable, but they are ultimately so much more powerful, I think.
I agree with you, and you are so right when it comes to, I mean, the number of people in this case that are actively working against Kelly from I have to say, not honest motives. They are maybe 5 people, maybe top. And the people who are supporting Kelly, it's so immensely many. So I agree with you. The what I take with me and what has made all of the difference for me working with this case day and night here is hope about humanity.
Yes. And this brings me actually to one thing, you know, that I wanted to ask you about. And you and I discussed this a little, you know, from my perspective, I am in this for Kelly. I am in this for Kelly, but I am also hoping that something that comes out of this is that there is one more place in the world where this ceases to be a question, where the question, which was a question 25 years ago when I adopted Homer, there were colleagues of the vet who saved her who felt that she was doing the wrong thing. And I think there's much less of that feeling here in the United States now. But I think what a lot of us are hoping is that there will be a general, however this goes for Kelly, that there will be a general public perception in Sweden that it is not that blind cats are just cats like any other cat, that there's nothing cruel or even particularly exotic about a blind cat or allowing a blind cat to grow from kittenhood to adulthood. What is your sense of that? What is your sense of public perception in Sweden?
Before this, I would have said, and even now, I would say that the public opinion on this is that it's self-evident that blind cats should be allowed to live, and that they are living, and that they are having wonderful, gorgeous, fulfilling, happy lives. I think that's the public opinion. But what I was not aware of before this is that it was even a question on another level when it comes to the county administrative board, and for perhaps also some veterinarians. So this case is really making clear to me and to the other people involved in working with this, that this is something that we must work to change, that we must work to make sure, we have to make sure that this is happening to Kelly right now, that it doesn't happen to another kitty.
Well, and Shalini, I think this is you have been so generous with your time with us, because I know that you have miles to go before you sleep on this one. But I could stay here and yell at you about things we agree with all day long, but I will not subject you or my listeners to that. But thank you so much for coming on this podcast, for personally giving us an update, for everything that you do. You're just such an inspirational person, for everything that you do on behalf of cats and animals in need. And really just thank you. Thank you for all of it.
It's me. I'm the one that wants to thank you. And on behalf of Kelly and everyone involved, thank you, Gwen, for all you are doing. I was looking at your website. I've been listening to your pod, and you have rallied up a storm for Kelly. And now we're just hoping that this will lead to the result that
to the promised land.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I'm going to spread this thanks around then to my listeners and to really to the people, to the 20,000 people who signed petitions, to the hundreds of thousands of you who wrote letters, and the specialists among you who have rallied on Kelly's behalf. Because truly, I mean, again, I am one person, and you, Shalini, are one person, and it is all of you listening who do this incredible work, and hopefully we are really, really hoping anxiously that it's going to be enough. I know people are so anxious, and we are hoping it will be enough for Kelly. And again, thank you guys for all of your work. Thank you so much for listening. And yes, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Curl Up with a Cattail with Gwen Cooper. Please remember to check in next week, and hopefully we will have an update on Kelly then. And that concludes this episode of Curl Up with a Cattail with Gwen Cooper. Don't forget to invite your feline-loving friends to listen to new episodes along with you. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, find out how to get your name and your cat's name included in my next book, or leave comments or questions for me to answer in future podcasts, head on over to gwencooper.com now. Thanks so much for joining me, and don't forget to hug your cat today.